Good evening to all of you in St. James South. A very energetic crowd this evening. And as I listened to David speaking earlier about the drug service, I was reminiscing and thinking about the last election and how the DLP went across the length and breadth of Barbados, telling Barbadians that they had the answers and they had the solution. And I was reminiscing in terms of health care, because they have done nothing, essentially, in terms of health care. And when you review the manifesto, I don't think you can be surprised that they have done nothing in health care. Because indeed, when they mentioned health care, it was all of 3 columns in their manifesto. This was health care. That was all they were promising the people of Barbados. However, as you said, as the chairman said, they're good at PR. And the people of Barbados took this for what it was worth. It was a pretty picture of the QEH. And they spoke about a QEH rescue plan, that they had this QEH rescue plan that would be put into force almost immediately they attaining the government of Barbados. This was to include an expansion of the accident and emergency department and an expanded asthmatic bay. They were very concerned about the number of asthmatics in Barbados. And I would like to ask any of you, when last have you heard any member of this government mention the word asthma-farless asthmatic bay? And that is why when I speak about the DLP, I speak about a government of deception and broken promises. Deception and broken promises. And in terms of the QEH, I suffered from them. I suffered from them every day on the calling programs, Winnie, assisted by a gang of moderators who have now been rewarded by the same DLP. They had all of the answers and all of the solutions to the problems at the QEH. And 3 years later, 3 ministers of health, 2 board chairmen, 2 boards, 3 CEOs, and you have a virtual morass at the QEH. Ask any objective person who works at the hospital. I mean, you don't even have to ask them sometimes. They come to you and they tell you things have never been so bad. This is the worst it has ever been. 3 years later, with all the solutions, and a rescue the QH plan. But that brings me to the current representative for this area, for this constituency, who is indeed the Minister of Health. And I would have thought that with a Minister of Health, with a diminished responsibility for health, because you would remember that when I was Minister of Health, it included not only the hospital, it included sanitation services, the cemeteries, solid waste, sewage management, Greenland, and in fact the Barbados Water Authority and all of its problems. So to have a Minister of Health from which all of those added responsibilities have been removed. He has no responsibility for sanitation. He isn't responsible for cemeteries, not responsible for solid waste anymore, not responsible for sewage, not responsible for water authority. You would think that he would have had a lot of time to be involved in solving the problems of the QH and implementing that rescue plan, whatever it is that they said they had. But nothing has happened. Apparently, the minister finds it more convenient to use this time in terms of overseeing the construction of his condos in St. Philip, or imbibing liquor at the Bush Bar at night and getting home at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, and paying little or no attention to the matters of the QEH. One thing is certain, he seems to have an opinion on everything outside of health care. He has an opinion on Owen Arthur's Christmas holiday. He has an opinion on Rihanna's dress. Indeed, he has an opinion. His favorite, I must say, is the public servants of Barbados. He always has something to say about them. What I have not heard him speak about, however, is the abuse of the ambulance service by one of his parliamentary colleagues. You can criticize public servants, but you must also criticize your colleagues. When one of them has an ambulance summoned to St. Philip, his residence, 3 times in one night, and twice to be sent back to the headquarters because he refuses to go to the hospital at this point in time. He is feeling better. A waste of resources. Do you know how, we don't know, who might have been affected, who would have had a heart attack or an asthmatic attack and needed an ambulance that night when it went 3 times to St. Philip? to bring back that member of parliament on the third occasion. Those are the sort of things that this minister needs to speak about. If you're going to criticize public servants, you also need to criticize your colleagues when they abuse something as vital and important as the ambulance service of this country. Those are the things he needs to speak about. But this evening, there are a lot of things I want him to answer when I go through. A lot of things. We were clear in terms of a QEH redevelopment plan. We were clear, and it was in our manifesto, we spoke about it, that the time had come for us to have a new state-of-the-art hospital in Barbados. That was what we said was needed. We were going to build one, and I know that when we return to government, we will build it. But what do we have? 3 years of dithering. You had the late David Thompson speaking about the shares in the National Bank will be sold and used to refurbish the QEH. You had Minister Eswick at that time saying that shortly that a new hospital was needed, and he was looking for a new location, and shortly he was going to go to Cabinet with a paper to identify and for them to acquire this area for a new hospital. And that was the end of him. You had Minister Innes being appointed. Shortly after his appointment, he said there was need for a new hospital. A couple of months later, David Thompson then again said that a financial vehicle would be set up, and there would be a committee to look to see if there would be an expansion of the hospital or a new build, and a decision would be made. That was back in 2009. This is now 2011. And as I speak to you this evening, this government is yet to make a determination on the QEH if there's going to be a new hospital, or if indeed they will continue at the hospital as it is and continue to patch here and patch there and end up with pure problems day after day. But we were clear in that respect. We were also clear that bearing in mind the increasing cases of chronic diseases, the epidemic of chronic diseases in Barbados, that there was need for a new cardiac unit in Barbados. And I negotiated this funding with the EU back in 2005. Funding has been available to the tune of about $6 million since 2006 for the construction and outfitting of a cardiac unit. As I said, $6 million has been available since 2006 for the construction and outfitting of a new cardiac unit. This is 2011. As I speak to you, no progress on that. And the EU is concerned. $6 million sitting down there, and they cannot make a decision as to what is going to happen in terms of cardiac care. And we have the minister on a health magazine speaking about health and concern about chronic diseases. And the cardiac unit that is needed to address this, nothing is happening in terms of that. But we were clear as a government that a cardiac unit was needed, and the funding was there. We were also clear that there was a need to expand the medical intensive care unit. And with the assistance of the Rotary Club South, which had said they'd provide $500,000 towards that. This is back in 2007. This is 2011. And you have a minister spending hours at the Bush Bar on a construction site in St. Philip, but not addressing the matter of this, a medical intensive care unit. So that you have patients who need to be admitted to the medical intensive care unit, having to be admitted to the surgical intensive care unit, and then you have seriously ill surgical patients occupying the recovery room, and surgery lists have to be canceled. That is what we have. And we have a minister who is busy and who has a voice, an opinion on everything.